when you're a writer, think of being that person on TikTok, that expert. Work up to your craft the way the expert did on playing the guitar. It's not like if I were to, I can't skateboard, but imagine if someone taught me how to skateboard and I made it across a parking lot and I go, ta-da, give me my money. You're like, no one's going to be impressed by me on a skateboard making it at the end of the parking lot. So it's the same thing with your writing. Just because you did a script, like, okay, that's great. It's a great first start. Now work your way up to master,
You're listening to Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Screenwriters Need to Hear This, the podcast. This is Michael Jamin. I'm here with Phil Hudson. Phil.
What's up? How's it going, guys?
What's up, Hello, everybody. We're doing another podcast. People are liking the show, so we're going to do more of it, I guess, Phil.
I like it.
I like it. You like it. I like it. So today's episode is called An Open Letter to the Guy Who Watched My Live. But before we go into it, Phil, you have some good news to share, and I'm going to lead you into it. Someone left a comment on one of my posts a while ago. No, it was only a few days ago. And they said, how do you make the jump from PA to producer? And I go, well, that's the perfect segue because Phil was just promoted from production assistant to associate producer on Tacoma FD after working on the show. How many seasons have you been on the show now?
This is my third season.
Third season. But you had done PA work before this as well.
Yep.
So tell us how that happened. How how'd that come about?
Yeah, I
have theories.
You have some theories? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I have theories. But I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, I want to hear yours first. Yeah, obviously, I'm in a situation where I don't want to go ask people, oh, what did you think of me? And why did I get this great honor of being an associate producer now? But as I've thought back on it and meditated, I really think it goes back to what I've been saying on the podcast. It's just my willingness to do whatever I'm asked to do. And they basically saw a need for someone to take on additional tasks that were more producerial, vendor contracts, working on locking down new space for a new mill, handling cleaning vendors, dealing with day-to-day problems on set. And because of my 3 years on the show, working in every aspect and down to being willing to hold the keys to the building during hiatus because we shoot in basically our own little studio off a lot. I was already doing that job. So their thought was, well, let's just pull him out of the production office where I was working for pre-production. And they gave me a new fancy title the day before we started shooting and basically just said it matches what I'm already doing on the show.
Right. So your fancy title, just so people know, because you're like people want to know what a producer does, and in this case, your responsibilities are they're not glamorous, but they're essential to get the show made, right?
Yep. So construction people are running out of water because they don't have Sparkletts didn't deliver enough bottles. Well, there are other people making much more complicated decisions, and so they've delegated that responsibility to me to make sure that people have water, that the cleaning people are doing their jobs, that, we need a new space for a mill. So we did a walkthrough. We worked with the location department to find a place. We walked through the building, communicated our needs to the building owner, received the contract, forwarded on to the right people. I mean, I handle invoices from vendors, from everything from electricians, setting up new power outlets to, like I said, Sparkletts water for everybody on set. And then I also deal with other things. I mean, in my first week, I had to terminate a vendor who was cleaning our buildings because they just weren't doing a good job, and find a new vendor, vet a new vendor, find the cost savings. And then I also had to sit by when someone else was let go from the show because they were not performing their duties as a PA. And I was tasked with being the representative for the show when they were let go.
Right. So this is all good news. You must be very happy. That's a nice title, associate producer.
Yeah, it feels good. It's right up there on the call sheet. It says it.
Right up there.
Yeah.
So you've been on the show for many years now, and there's many reasons why someone gets promoted. I think the easiest one is they know that they can't keep you at PA forever because you're not going to want to do that. And so the question is, do they want to lose you? And they don't want to lose you, so they have to give you a promotion and a raise and all that stuff because they don't want to lose you. And so that's how you get that bump, is by making yourself it's not even so much that they couldn't find someone to do the job, or they could have delegated jobs. They just don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
Because you work so hard.
It's all the things we've been saying, right? do I provide more value than I cost? And when I was
Yeah.
in the corporate world, recently I had a situation where someone was let go on our show, and I was there when it was happening, and it just reminded me, I, this is right as I was meeting you and your wife at that agency I was at. I was promoted, and I was the new guy. And about a month or two later, they let another guy go who was more senior than me. And I kind of felt like my head was on the chopping block a little because I was the new guy. And I went in and talked to my boss, and I said, kind of feel like that could have been me. He said, your name was brought up, but ultimately you produce more than that person does. And so we had to look at it from a financial perspective. And
Right.
that's why I kept my job. So I think you're right. I think that because I'm willing to do as much as they ask without saying no, and because I do so much and am competent and capable of doing anything that they need me to do, that
Mhm.
I uh, far exceed the value that I give, like the amount of money they pay me to do the job that I'm doing.
Right. So it wasn't political. It's not you jockeying. It's not you begging. It's not
Mhm.
you asking, how do I do get a, it's just like you just going above and beyond. They see it and then they don't want to lose you because it's hard to replace people like that. So
Yeah,
they have to give you a bump.
and to
That's what
your
it is.
right, and to your point, I mean, this was that season where I was thinking, man, season 3 on the show, still an office PA, started to
Mhm.
sting the ego a little bit, making me feel like I don't know that this is worth it. Maybe I should start considering work writing all day and finding management and looking for other routes in more traditionally. And yeah, and then they reached out to me and told me they were moving me out. So I think
Right.
they recognize that.
But this opens, you know, I'm sure the job isn't perfect, but it does open a lot of doors. And to the people listening who want to know how to break into Hollywood, this is just another way to do it because even as a screenwriter, because now you're in those circles, you're meeting people, and you're just exposed to it more. It's
Mhm.
just much easier now that you're in it than it would be if you were not in it. You
Yeah,
know?
we had a network executive come to visit set, and so I was tasked with greeting them because one of my responsibilities is parking, as glamorous
Hmm.
as that is. And so I sent an email, and of course, my signature now says associate producer. And so my conversation walking her to go get her COVID test on set was a different conversation than I've had doing the same thing as a PA in the past. It
Right.
was definitely, more. And then when she left, she copied myself and the showrunners in a thank you email for making her set visit so powerful, so pleasant and wonderful. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely opening up those other opportunities where people are just looking. I can already tell people are just looking at me a little bit different. It's interesting to say though, when the call sheet came out and my title had changed, everyone was super happy for me on set.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big family. Everyone was excited. They were like, it's about time something happened. And I
Yeah.
think it just kind of speaks again to just going out of your way to do what you can to make other people's jobs easier. And
Hmm.
that's what I've done the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised when they give you a bump. It's a nice title too. So
Yeah.
there
Thank you.
you go, everyone. We're celebrating for Phil today. All right, we'll just dive in. We'll dive into this topic. So I did a post the other day. When I was actually doing a live, I don't know if it's on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I do lives occasionally to answer questions and stuff. And someone was talking about how how to various ways to break in, and I said, well, just start doing it. Just start making there's so many people, and I want to dive into a little more. But so many people are begging to get into Hollywood. How, and they beg me, like, will you read my script? Will you do that?
Mhm.
And I'm like, this is not what this is about. I'm not a manager. I'm not an agent. I don't do that, and I can't do that. And I've explained why I can't do it a lot. But uh, there's so many people begging to get in, and I'm like, you're doing it wrong. Like that's a very traditional model of getting in. It's like rising up, and doing it the traditional way. But you don't have to be traditional about it. Don't beg, don't ask for permission about to get into Hollywood. Just do it. And I thought I'd talk a little bit more about what that really means. Um, and then there's that line from Field of Dreams, the movie. If you build it, he will come, right? Or they will come. I don't remember. If you build it, he will come.
If
And
you
it's
build
like
it, they will come. Yeah.
they will come. Uh, so the line isn't invite people, then build it. It's do something first, build it, and then they will come. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like put something up on the air, shoot it, put it up on YouTube, on Vimeo, whatever. Just make something great, and it can be short, and you don't need to spend a lot of money. And I'll talk about ways you don't need to spend a lot of money, and then make something amazing, and then you'll be surprised like Hollywood will come find you because you have something that Hollywood needs. And so this guy was like, yeah, I did that in the live because I did something with 50,000 views. And I was like, whoa, that's not nothing. You know, he I found a little more about it. He made like it wasn't even a short. It was like a half-hour episode or something, which is too long, by the way. You shouldn't have done that. But it had 50,000 views, and that's not nothing. That's like a baseball stadium. That's a lot of people. But in order to really move the needle, you really need 500,000 or 1,000,000. You need to do more than one. You need to be somewhat consistent about it. And I've talked about this in the past about how in the past, my partner and I have been hired of people who move the needle like that. Rhett and Link, they were YouTubers. They were no one. They were guys of the YouTube channel. And we also had a pilot. We almost did a pilot with a woman who had like her own series on YouTube that she made herself, and how producers found it and they brought us in to run, and the deal blew up or whatever. But it almost happened. It could have happened. And so, like, I want to talk about that a little more about what it means to like do something great. It turns out this guy was making half hours. It should have been 10 minutes or something, or 5. I'm sure he was doing overproducing the hell out of it. And I say this without watching it, but he was complaining, yeah, but it's getting expensive. And I'm like, yeah, I bet it is. But I can guarantee you, I could do it for half or less than half. Whatever you're spending, I guarantee you I could save money. Because the only thing that really matters, those three, like you could shoot it on your phone. You don't even have to. You don't have to use a special camera. You need to have good sound, because if people don't hear it, what's the point of doing anything? If they're struggling to hear it,
Yeah.
you know, so you need a boom operator, so somebody to do sound. But everything else he's overspending. And I was like, if he's worrying about dolly moves, if he's bringing in tracks or for crane shots, if he has a budget for special effects like on Adobe After Effects or whatever, what are you doing any of that for? Because you're never going to impress anybody with your special effects that you put in. If I want to see special effects, I'll go watch The Mandalorian. Like, they do effects amazing on that show. If I want to see camera movements, yeah, go watch anywhere else. But the problem is on The Mandalorian is like they have to protect the character, the franchise. So they don't get to just write whatever they want. Like, you got Lucasfilms weighing in, you got Disney weighing in, everyone's got an opinion because they have to protect the franchise. But this guy doesn't have any of that. You can just write something amazing and write in gritty and real and true, and you don't have to worry about protecting anybody's character. They're your characters. And so I was like, write something small and intimate that's easy to shoot, like a character piece, something that's easy. And that will, and if you could do it, the less money you spend on it, the more people like me will be impressed. Because it's like, wow, look what this guy did, for $100. Imagine if you gave him 100,000. You know what I'm saying? Like that's impressive. And so I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. And he was a little shocked by that. He's like, what? I don't have to do any of that. I have to make special. What? No. What? Make something small and intimate. Then it comes down to the writing, of course. So learn how to write. And I told the guys, like, take a couple of months off, learn how to, don't shoot anything, and just learn how to write and write something great. Maybe it's a couple months, maybe it's a year or whatever. But then go back and do it. And keep doing it. I was impressed with what he did, and I can tell you the writing isn't good enough. I know that for a fact without watching it, because that's why he has 50,000 views and not 500,000. Like, people were sampling it, but they weren't sharing it. They weren't, they weren't telling their friends all about it. But good for him, I thought, because so many people just talk about it, but they're either too afraid to put it out there, or too lazy, or too tired, or too this or that. This guy did it. But he was getting frustrated. But I was like, okay, but you're on the right path. Keep at it. Take a step back and really learn the writing part. And then I was impressed with him. So he shouldn't be frustrated. Just take a step back and work on the writing part.
Yeah, I think that's something I've noticed when I was in film school. I noticed that I took and I think I talked about this on a very early episode of our podcast, but I took a cinematographer who was one of the best cinematographers in our school. It's what he wanted to do. Everything he shot was beautiful, was gorgeously done. Camera movements were exquisite. I took him to lunch because we wanted to talk about stuff, and then we started talking about story. He's like, "Oh, I don't really care about story. I just want to make the best looking picture possible." Right. And I was like, "Wow, this is why I feel like most of the stuff coming out of our school is incredible, but it doesn't matter. Like, none of this.
No one wants to watch it."
Yeah. So
you know,
it really does. The story matters. And in my consulting world and the stuff that I do, I deal with a lot of people who are influencers who are just trying to, influencers by name, not necessarily by trade, right? They have their businesses and they've become influencers by promoting their businesses and putting out a message that is important about leadership and things like that. And I was talking to their videographer, and he agrees, like, to your point, people will watch a crappy video, but they won't sit
Yeah.
through bad sound, right?
Yeah.
But the quality of the content, meaning story, is far more important than the quality of the cinematography, because at a certain point it's just it's pornography at a certain point, right? It's just visually stimulating, but it doesn't do anything to your soul.
Yeah, it can plus what you have, but if you don't have something interesting to begin with, it's not going to go. It's only going to go so far. So I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that a little more, and I think people were surprised. There's so many. When I love the comments I got on this, where people are like, "Whoa, you just blew my mind!" But this is all. It should be I think it's all common sense. It's not like. I think people think there's rules that if you want to impress Hollywood, you have to be able to do all that. It's like, no.
Hey, it's Michael Jamin. If you like my videos and you want me to email them to you for free, join my watch list. Every Friday, I send out my top 3 videos. These are for writers, actors, creative types. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. I'm not going to spam you, and it's absolutely free. Just go to michaeljamin.com/watchlist.
This is another thing that, and I think it might just be bad advice from other people who are not in the industry or people who are trying to be in the industry. And I'm not knocking the independent film scene. Like, I love indie film. I love Sundance. I love the Durango Film Festival in Colorado, which I've been to many times. I love the Albuquerque stuff. I love the stuff in Salt Lake at Slam Dance and all that. But those people are trying to sell a film. And so they're trying to sell a project. They're trying to get funding to make their own thing. And so they're the ones making their own pilot, or they're the ones making their own sizzle reel. And I understand it. I felt the same way. I wanted to be an auteur and I wanted to produce and shoot everything. And now that I'm in this world, man, there's 150 people who spend 12 hours a day to make roughly 3 minutes of footage a day for us to put on it, to cut and chop up, to then put on TV. It is a massive undertaking, and it's not to say it's not worth it. And I think that you can definitely do that, but I think there's a lot of bad advice from people who are just trying to go about it. They're trying to break into Hollywood doing what an independent would do, and they're just different things.
Yeah.
And it's not to knock what you're saying, though, too, because this is advice, by the way, for anyone listening. This is the same advice Michael's been giving me for years. Shoot your own stuff, make your own stuff, do your own thing. He's been putting that down my throat, and I've been saying the same thing to him. You need to put your stuff out. You need to have a course. You need to put your stuff out. Right?
I've been doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been doing it. You've been seeing that result because all of the content you're putting out, I think, is valuable and it's actionable and it's honest and sincere and it connects with people in a real way. It's not just a cheap jab, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I hope so. Like, when you watch a video on social media, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's like, I'm always impressed by people who are experts at something, who are amazing at something. I don't care what it is. If you're watching someone skateboard or rail and do a flip, or if you're watching someone in Cirque du Soleil, some gymnast do something absolutely amazing, or even a guitarist, or someone just riffing on a guitar, but with skill like you haven't seen before. Like, I'm always impressed by that. And those people, it's not like they just picked up the guitar today. No. They've been doing this for years, right? And they work up to this master level, and it could be specific. It could be throwing a card through a freaking watermelon or whatever. Whatever it is, you're like, I'm always impressed by that. But I think people sometimes think that writing, they got to pass. They go, well, here's a script that I wrote. How do I get it made? And it's like, this is just something you did. Think of when you're a writer, think of being that person on TikTok, that expert. Work up to your craft the way the expert did on playing the guitar. It's not like if I were to, I can't skateboard, but imagine if someone taught me how to skateboard and I made it across a parking lot and I go, ta-da, give me my money. You're like, no one's going to be impressed by me on a skateboard making it at the end of the parking lot. So it's the same thing with their writing. Just because you did a script, okay, that's great. It's a great first start. Now work your way up to master,
Yeah.
become really great at it.
It's that, I shared this recently. It might have been outside of the podcast, but I definitely shared it when I was going to Acting for Life with Jill, when I was
Hmm.
there. She said something and it resonated. This quote from Bruce Lee: "Don't fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks one time. Fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times."
Hmm.
Right? And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
because that guy knows how to throw that kick in a devastating way. And you can go. I mean, I know there are probably mixed feelings about it, but you can go check out Joe Rogan teaching UFC fighters, legends, how to throw a side kick because he's a Taekwondo, genius. And it's
Mhm.
impressive. Like the way he
Right.
throws a kick, it's the technique, the way you spin, how you angle your leg, the way you twist your hip at the last second, and the way you extend. He gets down to those details in a way that only someone who's practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced can talk about. And something else you said really stood out to me. I'm currently going through the book Endure by Cameron Haynes. Have you ever heard of that guy?
No.
Cameron Haynes is probably the greatest bow hunter of all time. And I'm not a hunter, for anyone
Right.
here who has opinions on that. But like you said, I'm impressed by people who are world class at what they do, like top
Yeah.
of the charts. And he talks about how he went out on his first bow hunt and he missed. He was within 40 yards of a beautiful elk, I think it was an elk, and he missed so far behind it, it was embarrassing. And it inspired him so much to just be as good as he could that he will run multiple marathons a week, then go to his job at the Oregon Water and Power Department, then go out at hunt, and he just hunts and hunts and hunts, and he does all of these things down to building his endurance so that he can hunt better, and then working on his hunting so that he can run better, and all of it, the detail that he talks about. And he says, there's a line in there: people only see the moment of glory, they don't see the thousands of hours of practice that go into that moment of glory.
Yeah.
He's been
Yeah.
doing this stuff for 40 years, and now he's considered the greatest.
Right. Right. So, but I for some reason, I don't think people think of writing that way. I don't
No,
think
I
people
agree.
think of,
I don't think I
No.
have until recently. I think
Uh-huh.
that, it's like it almost feels to me, and I can't speak for other people, it almost feels like such a battle to get those words out of my soul and to be vulnerable and to put that
Mhm.
story on the paper, that I don't want to continue doing that process, because as you've mentioned before, if it's enjoyable, maybe you're not doing it right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I get it, but now I'm at this point. I think that getting notes from you on my last script from a few episodes ago, I think it was very helpful and very eye opening, because I put it out there, man. I put everything I could. Felt like I got something great, and you gave me a
Right.
B plus, and I
Right.
had to take a step back and look at that. And I was like, and you said this is good enough to show up on TV, but still a B plus, and I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
you gotta be good. Yeah.
what does it really take to make it to that next level? And it's like, it's all the stuff I knew I needed to do that I was too not lazy, hesitant maybe to put in
Right.
the time
Right.
and energy to do. But it's that old saying: proper prior practice prevents poor performance. Right? You
Right.
just have to put in the reps.
But it's funny thing, were you worried about being judged by putting too much of yourself into it?
I'm
Is that why
sure.
you didn't?
I'm sure unconsciously.
Because the weird thing is, you get judged by not. You'll get judged if you don't do that.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the podcast. I
Yeah.
think that's a very eye-opening perspective on this stuff. Is putting
Yeah.
out worse material than you could is literally
Yeah.
the thing you're afraid of.
Yeah, yeah. So making yourself vulnerable, and that's another. Like, now we're transitioning to and bringing everything goes back to my one-man show. But because I talk about this a lot. I have this book, personal essays, and so they're about me, and it's just very vulnerable to be talking about me in the way they can. And so, but the next step was, of course, I wanted to do. We talked about doing a one-man show, and then I was talking actually with Jill and with my wife who's directing it, and there's like, well, should we get an actor, because we can find an actor to do it, to play you, to do you. And I was like, yeah, but that's not right. I mean, it kind of has to be me. Like, if I'm going to be vulnerable on the page, what difference does it make if I'm going to be vulnerable in front of an audience? What difference does it make? It's the same thing. I've already, it's already put myself out there, so why not?
Yeah.
Well,
it's an important lesson to learn, man. Like,
yeah, you got to be vulnerable. I don't know why. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but that's in all things. If I learned anything about dating and relationships and overcoming mental blocks and trauma from your past. It is the vulnerability that solves the problem. So I used to think I'd put up this big defensive wall, and it was interesting. I was talking to my friend Simone, who's we've talked about. She's like a world class like psychologist, I guess you could say, just a
Mhm.
professional coach, and she was like, "You seem so strong, but the words you say in here are so vulnerable." And
Mhm.
I was like, "That's interesting because I don't feel strong, or didn't feel strong at the time, because I was locking up all the stuff that I didn't want to expose, and then
Right.
being vulnerable cleared the path for me to get where I am today. I have a wife, I have a kid, I'm making progress in a career I've wanted my entire life, and I think all of that
Mhm.
comes from just being okay with letting it be out there, being sincere, and being honest at all times with everything that's going
Yeah.
on when I need to."
Right. Yeah. That's great.
So,
That's I'm drunk. That's great.
yeah, just
I
proud.
just hiccup. All right. Well, is that it, Phil? Did we cover this?
Yeah, I think
I guess
so.
so.
Do you have any of? I mean, I guess the only thing I would ask is, do you have any specific advice about how someone could start to put this stuff out there? You said you're saying go put stuff out there, but you're also
Yeah.
saying learn how to write.
Oh. Oh. Well, yeah, well, there's a couple things. First of all, you can get you can get volunteers. You can get high school kids or, whatever, film students in college. All you gotta do is buy them pizza, and they're happy to just, get something for their reel. And so whatever you do, you can, and especially actors. Actors will be happy to act. And so but you can also limit your number of characters. You don't have to have a cast of 10,000.
Mm,
If you're gonna do a small character study, two or three is plenty, you know?
mm,
So there's that, and you should be able to shoot something for real cheap. I'm talking about $1,000 and that includes editing costs.
mhm.
If you don't have, if you can't edit it yourself. So and then you just put it up and start sharing. Make something that people will. If you make something great, you don't have to beg people to share it. People will want to share it.
Mm.
And so was that your question about advice?
Yeah, no, I think that's one part of it. I think the other part of it is the advice to those people who are making things and not seeing the traction to say, "Ooh, take some time to learn how to tell a good story."
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And also, like, compare your, don't just do one. I wouldn't just do one episode, or like, that's why I thought doing, the guy did 1 half hour. I was like, no, you should do one. You should do 5 or 10 minutes, and build yourself up, and that way people come back and they want to see more and more, and especially if you make a little cliffhanger at the end of it. But you'll notice that episode 10 is much better than episode 1, just because you're constantly learning how to do it and you're getting better at it. So that's part of the improvement process, is doing more of it, not just doing one fabulous one thing. Just keep doing more of it, I think.
And I think
More,
I think episode 34 of our podcast that just came out a couple weeks ago, it's writing as fractals. I think it kind of speaks to that, right?
Mm,
Where
yeah.
you don't have to tell one 30-minute story. You can tell 10 3-minute stories, and they can still equal what the 30-minute could be, but you're building
Yeah.
up suspense and exploring specific aspects of these characters. And then, I got to sit down with one of the actors on our show, and just kind of walk him through how to break a story. He gave me his pilot to read, and I read it, and he was
Oh,
missing.
wow.
I was impressed with his ability to capture dialogue and character.
Mhm.
Not surprising, but very impressive. But same problem I see with every other script I've read in the last 2 years. It's just missing the story beats, the things that need to happen to be in there
Right.
to make it compelling. And so I kind of broke it out for him. And at the end, he's like, "This is what I've been waiting for, man. Just I've been giving this to
Hmm.
people, and they're like, well, what are you trying to say?" I was like, "Well, I asked you
Hmm.
that at the beginning, and you knew what that was. But now all I've done is shown you how to say it, and then you
Isn't
get
that
to
interesting?
infuse all those other beautiful things that you do from your 20 years of being an actor
And
into this now."
and this is a professional actor who's on
Mhm.
set, who you'd think would know but doesn't, because it's not obvious. It's not obvious. I watched a clip of Mandy Patinkin talking to, who, I don't, he was being interviewed by someone, I can't remember, but in the clip, he was talking about how he tried writing a piece, and he had all these ideas, but he couldn't figure out what the through line was, and he was getting frustrated, and then he called up Rob Reiner, who directed him on
Mhm.
Princess
Princess
Bride,
Bride. Yeah.
and they talk, and he's like, well, what is Princess Bride about? And Rob Reiner was like, oh, it's everyone in that, every single story in that, it's about a character and a character finding true love. That's every single story is true love. And he's like, many things, mind was blown, even though he was the star of it.
Even though he's in
didn't
the scene,
realize
it's
it.
like, what did he say? He said to blave, which we all know means to lie. And he said true love. Like it's that
Oh,
scene
right,
with
yeah.
Wesley. He literally says true love.
But that was every character, and so it's really, that was the one through line, and he didn't, and so yeah, that's kind of like we go in our course, we explore this. This is what it's about. We kind of talk about how to write,
Yeah.
and pull the curtains back. So yeah.
Yeah. And then all those other beautiful things that you've learned and experienced are the set dressing that make that
Right.
story unique to you. And that was my conversation with him. He has a very unique perspective, very different than mine. And his perspective, he's telling a story he could tell that I could never tell because it is so unique to them. And he wanted to keep all these beautiful moments in there. And I was like, yeah, but they are obstructing the actual story. And so once we laid it out, then I showed him how he could kind of layer those themes back in. And he's like, oh, this feels so good. Right? That's what he said. And it's like, yeah, that's it's right, man.
And this is you from taking the course, and this is you now you're helping others. Now you're helping the pros, Phil.
Yeah,
maybe you'll collaborate with them. Who knows? You know?
He's already talked to me about it. So,
oh, there you go.
We'll
now
see,
you got a
man.
star. Now you have a star. You don't even have to cast a thing.
Yeah,
that's good. And right. So now, okay, now this comes back to full circle. We're talking about how close you are now. Now that you're in to breaking into Hollywood because you're working here. Now you are potentially, maybe not, but potentially working with a legit TV star and maybe doing a project with them. But that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's not something that would have happened 5 years ago.
Not at all. Not at all.
So, yeah.
So it's every call, every opportunity, take those opportunities, hustle, just put in the unseen 10,000 kicks, if you will.
Yeah.
And it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because you could help him potentially tell his story, and it's still his story. You're just the writer of it.
His producing partner called right in the middle of it, and he introduced me as, "This is Phil. We need him at our production company." Right. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. It's good stuff though, but it's this type of content. And for anyone who's listening, and maybe you don't have the funds to buy the course, that's okay. Like the feedback, the content of the podcast, everything that Michael puts on his social media, the watch list, the free lesson even that you give out, all of that stuff is, in my opinion, some of the most valuable screenwriting lessons and content that exist on the internet. And I've done a lot of them, as many of you have heard me say many times. So make sure you're following Michael at Michael Jamin Writer. Go sign up for the watch list for weekly inspiration, michaeljamin.com/watchlist. Go get your free lesson if you haven't yet. I promise you it's worth it. michaeljamin.com/free.
and it's free. I promise you it's worth it, and it's free.
Yeah, I promise you it's worth your time. I think that's a conversation we've had though, just to kind of wrap it up. Like I have to charge because this stuff's so valuable and people don't value what's free. And I think that's very true. How many free PDFs have you given your email for on the internet that you've never read?
Right.
And I think that people, the free price tag on this stuff it kind of buries the value a little. So I don't want to understate the value of that stuff. And to be clear, they were literally the first private lessons you were giving me when we first met almost a decade ago.
Yeah, this is Phil. The course came up because of Phil, because this is what I told Phil, and Phil's like, how come I didn't learn this in film school?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I don't know what you're teaching me there.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was the one who told me to make the course. You could thank Phil. All right, everyone, thank you so much, and hope this was helpful. And we will we'll hear you on our next podcast coming up soon. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Keep writing, guys.
Bye bye.
This has been an episode of Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin and Phil Hudson. If you'd like to support this podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing this podcast with someone who needs to hear today's subject. For free daily screenwriting tips, follow Michael on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Michael Jamin Writer. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Phil A. Hudson. This episode was produced by Phil Hudson and edited by Dallas Crane. Until next time, keep writing.